Hi, and welcome to our virtual gardening program. My name's Diane Jaroch, and I'm the Assistant Director and Adult Services Librarian at the Irvin L. Young Memorial Library in Whitewater, Wisconsin. Today, our virtual gardening program is all about microgreens, and we're going to grow some microgreens. They're really easy to grow, and they're very nutritious. A lot of people aren't sure what microgreens are, and they get them confused with sprouts, but they're actually two different things. Sprouts and microgreens are different versions of the same plant at different stages of their development. They're both very young plants, and they are used in salads, as garnishes. People put them in smoothies, all for extra nutrition. They're both very nutritious. Microgreens are even more nutritious than sprouts. So today I have two different kinds of microgreens. We're going to be growing wheatgrass microgreens simply because those seeds are bigger, and you'll be able to see it better when I demonstrate, and a mix of microgreens. Now I have a tray of microgreens that I grew 5 days ago, and as you can see, they've already sprouted very quickly. And they were very easy to grow. I don't know if you can see, but they're leaning. I had them in the window, and that they're all leaning towards the way the sun was. The best place to grow these is in a sunny windowsill, ideally in southern exposure window, but any sunlight will work. And as with other plants, they need more sunlight in the winter than they do in the summer. So a little more about microgreens and how they differ from sprouts. I've got some facts here for you. And so let's just talk about why microgreens are different than sprouts and how they're grown differently. The biggest difference is that sprouts aren't grown in soil, microgreens are. Sprouts also get mold more easily than the microgreens. Similarities between them: they're grown from the same seed, they both require water and germination. Both can be pre-soaked before growing if you wish. The seeds I have today do not need to be pre-soaked. Both are susceptible to mold, and both are super nutritious, as I mentioned. The differences are sprouts are younger than microgreens. They're seeds that have already germinated. You can eat the entire plant, including the seed, the roots, and the shoots, so you're eating all of it. And they're generally grown in the dark and moist conditions. Microgreens are planted in soil or soil substitute, and the seed concentration is a fraction of what those are in the sprouts. And after the initial germination for the microgreens, they are grown in high light conditions, unlike the sprouts, and they need normal humidity and good air circulation. You also cut the stem. After your microgreens have grown taller, you cut them off, leaving the root of the seed, unlike the sprouts where you're just eating the whole thing. So there are other similarities, actually, and differences. So let's talk about those before we go further. Microgreens have a stronger flavor than sprouts, and they come in a different variety. The leaves are different shaped, there's different kinds, and the different colors as well. Sprouts are the youngest plant, and then next are the microgreens. So microgreens are called cotyledons, and they're the first leaf-like structures that come from seedlings. Each seedling will have one or two cotyledons. They're usually not the same shape as the leaves form on a mature plant. They come in different colors: red, purple, green. And the leaves develop after the cycloledons. So first you grow them, and then you have your microgreens. There are different types of microgreens, over 100 different varieties. They need proper air ventilation. Sprouts don't. They require light to grow. Sprouts don't need light. Eating microgreens is a little less risky than eating sprouts as far as mold and contamination is concerned. They're more nutritious than sprouts, and they have more fiber than sprouts. They usually are grown in soil, whereas sprouts are water, so sprouts are considered being grown hydroponically. Our microgreens are grown in the soil like traditional plants. And you harvest the microgreens about 7 to 10 days after they've grown. You want them to get a good size so that you can cut them off and leave them so they can continue to keep growing. And again, where to begin? You need a sunny windowsill, you need a container, you need seeds, you need water, and I think that's about it. Why don't we get started in growing some microgreens? As I mentioned, wheatgrass is a microgreen. Wheatgrass is very nutritious for you. I have some wheatgrass seeds here. I also have a mix of microgreen seeds from the Burke company. These are both from reputable seed companies, which you want to make sure that they are. And you want to make sure that your soil is fresh soil, a good mix of potting soil. As I mentioned before, here is the pot that I grew. Now you don't need to get fancy with your containers. I have some here that can be used. You can use a pie tin. You can use a plastic container like I did that mushrooms came in. You can use any kind of pan like this. You could use a container like this with the lid on it. Now an important thing is you want to make sure that you put some holes in the bottom of your container for drainage. Very important, otherwise they can rot. This I poked some holes in the bottom so it's ready to go. So we have our container. Next we need our soil. I've got some potting soil here and I'm just going to put some in the bottom. And you want about 1 inch. You can go up to 2 inches, but no more than that. This container fits about 1 inch of soil, so that's what we're going to use today. And we're just going to fill this up. Again, I'm just using some potting soil. So we get our container filled, and then you want to pat it down. Not too hard, but you want to pat it down so it's firmly in there. Now I think I'm going to add just a little more soil to this. You can put it up to the very top if you want, which is what I think I'm going to do. We're just going to keep adding some soil here. There we go. I'm going to pat it down a little bit. So I've got a container that mushrooms came in. Didn't have to buy it, except for buying the mushrooms. I put my soil in there, potting soil. And next we're going to get the seeds. As I mentioned, we're going to do wheatgrass, and I'm doing the wheatgrass because the seeds are bigger so that you can see as I'm growing them in here. There you can see what the wheatgrass seeds look like. They're pretty sizable. The other patch of microgreen seeds I have are really tiny and you probably wouldn't be able to see them. So then you just want to sprinkle them evenly over the entire container. Just spread them. Don't have to worry if you get 2 of them together or anything. Some will germinate, some will not. So we have that. So this is how I did it last time and that worked well. So there, I've spread my seeds over the top. Now you just want to push them in gently. Not even pushing, just patting them down so that they kind of are getting stuck into the soil a little. There we go. And then now, after this, there are 2 different steps you can take. You can either put a layer of soil on top of this, or if you are using a container that has a lid, a plastic lid like this, you don't need to put the soil over for the top of the seeds. You would then just put the plastic container on the top and leave it like this, and this would be like a greenhouse, and they would grow. And when they started to sprout, then you would take the lid off. I'm going to put the soil on the top, so I'm now going to take my seeds and I'm going to use my hand because I don't want to get too much soil. You don't want too much soil on the top, just a very, very light layer. You just want to cover those seeds. Very light layer of dirt on the top. It's a little messy, but that's all right. Really easy to do. Be a good project for children, it'd be a good science project. And they're really nice to have because whenever you need a little garnish or a little something to put in your salad or your smoothie, you can just go right to your microgreens and snip a few. And that's a nice thing. Let's say I was ready to use some of my microgreens. I wouldn't have to cut them all off. I could just cut what I needed, and that works very well. It's also best to cut them right before you use them. They will store in the refrigerator 2 to 5 days in an enclosed container. You do want to wash them after you cut them, before you eat them. So there we go. Now, next step, I will say the soil that I used was pre-moistened, so my soil was moist when I put it in here. So you want your soil to be a little moist, not wet, but moist. And after you put them in, you just want to take some water and mist the top so that the top is just moist, not wet. You don't want it wet because that will cause mold and can cause it to rot. And now I'm ready to put these in the sunshine. And within 5 days, this is how they'll look. And in about 4 to 5 more days, these will be higher and I'll be able to harvest them if I want. Very easy to grow and very satisfying. Interesting thing about the wheatgrass, you can grow it for your cats too. Cats love to eat it, especially if they can't get outside and eat any of the grass in the winter. So if nothing else, you can grow it for your pets. And like I said before, if you don't want to do the method where you put the soil on top, feel free to put a plastic cover. You can even use like saran wrap. And you just put it around it. You don't put holes in it or anything. And that creates that greenhouse effect. This worked just fine for me with the soil on top. Now when I first grew these, I noticed that it seemed like there was too much soil on the top, so as they started to sprout, I just brushed some of that dirt off so that they could poke out of the soil better. And they did. They're doing just fine. As you can see, these actually need to be misted. You will want to mist them 1 to 2 times a day. So today I misted these that I just planted. Tomorrow I'll want to mist them again 1 to 2 times a day, depending upon how quickly they're drying out. And again, you don't want them wet, you just want them moist. So this one is all ready, and I can put it back in the windowsill until tomorrow when it needs misting again. My new tray is all ready to go. Some facts about growing them and some problems you can run into. Some of the problems that you might run into are seeds don't germinate, and that's usually just a problem from the seed company. You want to make sure that your seeds are fresh and not expired. Uneven germination, you don't really need to worry about that. All you need to do then the next time is to make sure you have an even layer of the seeds like we demonstrated. There could be white fuzz or mold. The fuzz tends to hang out at the bottom, and it's a spikier than mold, and that will go away with watering. The mold tends to hang out at the top of the soil, and that is a sign that it's been overwatered or it is in an area in your house that's too humid. So you can rectify that by switching locations or not watering it as much as you are watering it. Rot, again, if it rots, that's because of too much water or too much humidity. Weak stems that are drawn up, and that is lack of nutrients in your soil. So you want to make sure that the soil you get is nutrient rich. And in fact, if you buy organic soil that none of the minerals have been depleted from, your microgreens will be even more nutritious than if you just used regular potting soil. If your leaves are yellow or underdeveloped, that's a sign that they are not getting enough water or enough nutrients. If they look like the leaves have been burned, that's probably because they had too much sun. Maybe you had it too close to a heat source or too close to the window and the sun got, burned it. That would happen more likely in the summer than in the winter months. And if they wilt after you pick them, to keep that from happening, wash them in cool water right after you pick them. And then if you're not going to eat them right away, put them in an enclosed container in the refrigerator. And again, they'll last in the refrigerator 2 to 5 days. I've got dirt on my paper. Wonder why. A few more things to talk about. Microgreens have a stronger flavor than sprouts. They come in a variety of shapes and textures and colors. And while the sprouts are the youngest plant, then the microgreens are the next size up. And they are called Katy Ledons, like I mentioned earlier. And for your sprouts to be really nutritious, as I mentioned, you want to use that organic soil. And wheatgrass especially is very nutritious. It's a young grass of the common wheat plant. It's abundant in vitamins, minerals, enzymes, protein, and chlorophyll. It contains every amino acid, vitamin, and mineral necessary for human nutrition. And it is one of the few plants that we can call a whole food because it meets all of those nutritional values. Again, that will only happen if you're using mineral-rich soil, especially organic, that the minerals have not been depleted from. Kilo for kilo, wheatgrass has more vitamin C than oranges and more vitamin A than carrots. It can lower your blood pressure, your cholesterol, increase red blood cells. It regulates blood sugar disorders like diabetes, and it can aid in helping to decrease and prevent some cancers. So wheatgrass and the other microgreens, very nutritious, easy to grow, and if nothing else, if you grow the wheatgrass and you have a cat, they will love you if you let them eat it. So that is our program on microgreens. I hope that you enjoyed it, and I hope that you try growing your microgreens yourself. Really easy to grow, very rewarding. Join us next time when we talk about creating interior landscapes. Thank you.